Oh boy! Isaac reminds me to make a couple of announcements. The first is next week for those taking the lecture class only, we will try to bring in a sheet showing what our records are for things you've turned in, just so that you can make sure that we have recorded all of the whatchamadinkies that you have turned in. That's an official term. The other thing is I want to be extra clear on how this goes with it. In the lecture series, you get one free absence, no questions asked. After that, if you have other absences, you have to come clear them with me before I will let you just have a pass on them, okay? So you've got to have a pretty good reason. So come talk to me if you have missed more than one or if you're anticipating missing more than one, and we will talk over how you can deal with that. Because we record all the lectures and post them, there are opportunities for you to read the lectures and do a response, but I might require you to write a longer response because the one you turn in here is kind of just to prove you were here. If you have to do a longer one, it'll have to be a prove you actually watched this whole boring thing for various definitions of boring. All right, so today we are going to take some prose. I have taken 4 of the students from my class, the other class, the workshop portion of this class, I suppose, and we are going to be looking at their writing. It's only people I asked ahead of time to come up. So if I didn't call you up, that means I didn't grab yours. They're mostly people I was in this. I'm in this week that I was reading their writing. I picked a paragraph that I thought that would be useful. Remember, when we do this, everyone's writing can use some of this. So I'm not picking on people. In fact, I threw in one of my own for us to look at and see if we can change anything on it as well. So that's what we're going to do for part of this class, and then we'll see where we go after that. Let's go ahead and start with questions, though. We have done basically everything we're going to do before transitioning into the business side of things, other than our 3 guest lecturers, which will start next week. So if there's something non-business related you want me to chat about, or blab about or whatever, go ahead and ask me.
How do you work through character development without being like, oh, this person's really stubborn? Let's make kind of so the reader's like, oh, they're obviously trying to develop this character.
How do you're kind of asking about subtlety. You say, how do you make this character be stubborn but not make it obvious to the reader that you're trying to make this character?
Develop a character without there being obvious obstacles to develop that character, if that makes sense.
Okay, how do you develop a character without obvious obstacles? Gradual? I'm not sure if I can quite understand. Yeah. Is this...
Maybe, oh, this person's really, really stubborn. Here's a situation where he has to be not so stubborn. Haha, now he's less stubborn. And then,
Right. That's kind of how we do writing. It's just a matter of how subtle you want to do it, or how stark you want your arc to be. Some characters start stubborn and end stubborn. The style of character you're talking about, I've done ones where I'm writing along where they're a very self-aware character, and they kind of have to confront their problems and deal with them through the course of the book. Not all people are self-aware in that way. Some people are more instinctive, and they work just by instinct. I often bring up Matt Cotham because I think he is one of Robert Jordan's best characters, and his progress is never self-aware. But he changes through the course of the books just by the way he acts. So it's the subtle shows of his characterization that matter. And so how self-aware is your character? That's one thing I'd ask. It sounds like you're asking how to do that without making it just how contorting your entire plot around, making that happen. And sometimes you do want to contort the plot around it, but usually when I'm working on a character and it's working really well, there will be plenty of opportunities through the natural progress of the plot for them to manifest the type of person they are. Practice with this is just come up with a very simple story, a very simple scene, and run 4 of your characters through it as the viewpoint protagonist, and practice how they would each respond to the different stimuluses in this scene, and see if you can write 4 different scenes for those characters. Then you've got depth of characterization. You've got a strong difference between your characters. And then, try doing that for your character at the end of your book and say, all right, how will they react to it now, this same scene? And maybe that'll give you some guideposts on what to do. I've done that before with characters, and it's worked for me. I don't know. It's a hard one to answer because it seems like a very individual thing you're trying to get at. Yes.
This one's randomly, but with timing. Every winter semester, you have 3 weeks where you do stuff. This is always coincides when you have a new book out. So
Yes.
do you usually have all your books that come out in the early part of the year?
I do not really get to choose when the book releases are. For years, I had a fall release only. And then I started having a fall and a summer release. And it's just by when they slot things, when things come out, and when I turn things in. I would really like to get back to having fall releases because it's easier for this class. And, then you get the Christmas season and things like that. But in the spring, there's less competition for bestseller lists. And so, for instance, when A Memory of Light and things like, well, I shouldn't say Memory of Light, when like Gathering Storm or Towers of Midnight, I'm trying to remember which one, but one of those came out November-ish, and we had a John Grisham book right after it, and we had a Dan Brown book right before it. And so we had to like squeeze it into the 1 week where we thought we could get number one, and we did. But, we had to get number one like one of those weeks. Grisham had come out the week before, and the second week he was out, he sold 120,000 copies in hardcover, and we sold like 150. Right? And his first week, he sold like 200. So if we'd been up against him first week, we wouldn't have gotten number one. But second week, we did. And those numbers are not exact. I can't quite remember what they are. But, A Memory of Light, which came out in January, it was like, 150,000 copies. And the number two was like 25. And so depending on when you release, you can really not just get bestseller placement. Bestseller placement is very important because a lot of bookstores, depending on your bestseller list placement, they will then the next week place you on a bestseller rack, which is kind of like free advertising and things like that. Beyond that, there's this thing we call co-op. Co-op is when a bookstore lets the publisher, they'll go to the publisher, usually, and they say, we'll give you this many slots in the front of our store. Like when you walk into a Barnes & Noble, there's like that, they call it the octagon. There's also upright stands and things like this. This is all paid space. The only thing you get on without paying is the regular bookshelf. Usually the end caps are paid space too. And that paid space is what we call co-op, where it's not really usually money just paid by the publisher. It is, if you put my book here and you sell it, you can keep an extra 50 cents of that book sold. So that gives motivation for the bookseller to pick books they think will sell well, but it also gives motivation to the publisher because they want to get that extra space. So there's like this give and take where you both kind of settle on books you think will do better and will be good in that location. So it's not completely just sold space, but it mostly is. Getting that co-op can be much harder if, for instance, J.K. Rowling wants that co-op space. J.K. Rowling is going to sell more copies in that space, and if they're going to put J.K. Rowling there, they're going to get a lot more of that extra 50 cents than if they put Brandon Sanderson there. And so if they're like, we've sold all our co-op space to all these people, then it's much harder to get the co-op. Now, most of my books are big enough that I will be the one that is getting the co-op instead of someone else. But there is that give and take, particularly as a new writer, where you could in March get co-op that you'd never get in the fall. That said, book sales, we found that generally February is like the weakest month for book sales. It really depends on your genre and things like that, but it tends to be the month you least want to release in. And March is a little bit better, but it takes till April before general bookstores start picking up quite a bit more. So it depends. If your publisher's like, we're going to release you in February, like they released the Lego movie in February or January or whenever it was, because there's no competition, and you'll get everybody who goes out, even though fewer people are going out to buy books or watch movies, whatever. That can be really good for you, or you can be one of the ones where they kind of throw it into that month because, well, at least they're not wasting one of their prime slots, right? It's the same sort of thing that happens with movies. And so being put in a February slot can be either really awesome for you or really terrible. And I have no idea how to tell you to judge which it is, because your publisher will always tell you that's the really wonderful one. But if you're self-publishing, which we'll talk about a lot, then these things matter a lot less because this is the way that people's retail habits go. By the way, January tends to be pretty good for books, even though it's really bad for films. That's because people give a lot of gift cards and a lot of e-readers as Christmas presents. And so when someone gets a book gift card or an e-reader, they generally then spend the gift card or open up the e-reader, and then January they tend to buy. And we found that January tends to be really pretty good for books. It's February, once those book gift cards are all gone, that then a lot less sells. Interestingly, you'll notice, you probably didn't notice, but I noticed a few years ago when during the big contract disputes between the Big Six and Amazon, Amazon chose February to be the month where they pulled all the publisher books and didn't sell them for a month, because that's the month that they don't sell as well anyway. So, all right, any other questions? Yes?
Do you ever pick an element of your writing that you want to work on and then do a project and focus on just that element?
Do I ever pick an element of my writing, and I repeat this because we're now recording with this microphone thing. Do I pick an element of my writing that I want to work on and then write a book specifically for it? Yes, I do. Basically, every book I'm writing, I will pick one thing specifically I want to be working on and try to do that better. Now, of course, you want to get generally better on everything all the time, but yeah, I do that quite consciously with a lot of books. And some books, you know, it'll be different from other books. With Warbreaker, you can tell pretty obviously I was working on humor and different styles of humor in that book. And if you read that, there's different types of humor. I was also working on the idea of reversals and things like that, whereas Way of Kings, I really wanted to take my world building to another level and really focused on that. You want to do everything in every book, but I will do these things. And oftentimes when you see a shorter piece from me, it's me experimenting with one thing. The Emperor's Soul, which is one of my shorts, was, can I write a story that basically all takes place in one room? Whereas Legion was, let me try doing something, a contemporary detective story sort of thing, and see if explore that genre. So there you are. Yes, today our little excerpt is from Death by Pizza, which is my attempt at urban fantasy. So we shall see. I don't even know if we'll get to mine, but yeah.
For developing writers, and like as you were starting, like how long would you say you spend writing every day? You spend like 2 hours every day, and you spend less. Like what do you usually do to like become really good?
What? Okay.
What kind of time commitment?
Yeah, what kind of time commitment does it take to become a great writer? It really is going to depend on where you're starting skill level wise and your own style of writing. Let me explain. Eric Flitt, a friend of mine in the industry, writes a lot of alternate history books and science fiction books, quite a good writer. Eric Flitt is what he self-describes as a binge writer. For Eric, as far as I can tell, even way back when he was starting, what he would have to do is take 3 or 4 months and write like 12 or 14 hours a day and get the book out of his system beginning to end and then be done. And then he doesn't write again for months. My friend Jancy, she'll come talk to you guys. You can ask her about this because I know she binge writes quite a bit. There's like 6 months of the year where she's writing and 6 months of the year where she's not. And during that other time, she's thinking about writing, she's revising, whatever. You can ask her about that. I am a day, write my 3,000 words every day writer. It's really more like 2,500 most days. But it's like every day I write that much. And when I was trying to break in, it was less, but I did it every day. Every day consistently, and I needed like 4 hours minimum, and I need a block. I can't write for 30 minutes, stop, then find 30 minutes later and write, because it's like I have an hour of warm-up during which I'm getting like 200 words an hour, and then I get into it and I'm doing like 500 or 700 words an hour. In the end, it's going really well, and then I kind of transition out of it and it's slow again. And that's about a 4-hour block for me. Which gives me like 2 hours in the middle of really solid writing. If I don't get a 4-hour block, my writing never quite gets going, I've found. I can kind of force myself to, but it doesn't work as well. Other writers are much better. There's a woman in my writing group that, she writes for 30 minutes and then watches TV and is distracting, comes back and dabbles for 30 minutes and things like this. We say write every day. But there's a big old asterisk on that write every day, which is figure out what works for you. And if writing 8 hours a day during the summers between classes and things, and finishing an entire novel, and then spending the rest of the semester, the 2 semesters, spending 1 hour a day revising or working on an outline for what you're going to do the next summer works for you, great. Or even if it's do that binge writing and then on weekends you do your revisions and planning and you don't write anything during the weeks, if that makes you produce fiction, then that's your process, and learn how to maximize it. So try different things and see what happens. There is credibility to this whole 10,000 hours thing, but I don't know if the numbers, are as accurate as that. But the concept is accurate. The concept is, for most of us, we are going to have to spend several years, as many as 10, practicing this and learning our own style before we become a true master at this form. And even then, hopefully, we'll still be learning and getting better, but it's at that kind of time where we cross the threshold into what we do is consistently very good. All right. Any other questions? Yeah, right here.
So I know we'll be talking about self-publishing more
Yes.
later.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have a quick question.
Go for it.
If you are like a new writer and you can't get published, when should you start thinking about self-publishing?
There's that should word. And my whole kind of mandate for myself for this class is to use as few shoulds as possible and as many can or what do you wants, does that even work? As possible. Self-publishing is extremely viable in today's market. There are plenty of writers who are earning a full-time income with their writing, self-publishing, never really having any print editions and working completely off of electronic publishing. It works. I will give you some pointers I've found out. When should you be considering it? I think that it depends on your own feelings. For instance, if having print editions in the bookstores is a very big deal to you, if you do not want to bother with hiring an editor, with finding a cover, with doing cover design, and releasing the book yourself, if these things are bothersome to you, and I know writers, they're like, that's something I never want to do. I don't want to worry about that aspect of it. If I have to worry too much about that aspect of it, I'll stress so much that I will never get my writing done. For these people, traditional publishing only is still, the most viable thing. For other people who are like, wow, I could do this all myself. I'll talk about finding artists and things like this, and I'll talk about finding editors and things like this. I could do all of this. That sounds kind of fun to me, doing it all myself. Then you, saying should, then you probably want to consider self-publishing from the get-go, right? My whole kind of my quest when I started getting publishing, one of the fundamental rules of my quest was don't close any doors. Be willing to take any opportunity and try anything. This is why I submitted to publishers and agents when some people would say, oh, you really should submit only to agents. No, I submitted to everybody that I felt I could get a book to with, we'll talk about how to match your books appropriately. It's not like I'm sending a book to a children's publisher that only does picture books when it's a 400,000 word fantasy epic. But within reason, I'm sending to everyone. And if I were breaking in right now, that mandate, knowing that I am pretty self-motivated and like aspects of the publishing industry, I would be trying both. I would have a book that I'm submitting traditionally, or several of them. I'd probably every year, since I write about 2 books a year, what I would probably be doing is writing 1 book and trying to publish it traditionally, and I would be writing 2 shorter books instead of 1 book, 2 50,000 word length books, and doing those self-published, and I would just see what takes off because I wouldn't want any doors closed to me. But we will talk about all of this. So what is the should? The should is what are you comfortable with and how fast do you write? Those are kind of the sliding scales. If you can only write a book every 4 years, self-publishing is not for you. If you can only write a book every 4 years, then being an academic is probably for you. Joking a little bit about that, but not really. Because every 4 years, you're going to have to be really good and sell quite a bit to get 4 years worth of income off of 1 book. But if you are, Connie Willis writes 1 book every 4 years, right? She's fantastic. I think Connie still does academia and things like this. And so, yeah, it depends. All right, let's go ahead. Oh, yeah, we'll do one more. Go ahead.
I know the answer is probably just going to be the internet.
Right.
But as your writing group graduates,
Right.
how do you keep that writing group just
I personally do not like online writing groups. The face-to-face interaction and the people talking about stories and seeing how animated they are and how their body language is and their facial expressions and things, I can't do an online writing group. It just never has been very useful to me. I do have friends who do Skype ones, and they like them. They're kind of a necessary evil since their good writing group members moved away. I would suggest that your best shot at a writing group is finding people from a class like this or from LTUE or something like this that you can then invite into a writing group, get it going, and don't feel bad if it kind of falls apart after 3 years or 2 years or something like that. Take a few members from it, try some other new members, and try a new writing group. Writing groups do tend to evolve a lot, particularly I found in the early years and things like that, but it's going to depend on what works for you. I just can't make those work for me. And so my writing group right now still contains the majority of members are people I met in this class. This is the third incarnation of it, and so there are new people that haven't been in the class and things like that, but the core of it is still me and Peter and Kaylin and Dan when he's not in Germany. And that's my writing group, and it's worked for me, and it is this class where I found it. All right, let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to steal Isaac's chair. Sorry, Isaac. He's going to have to find another chair. We're going to dim the lights, and so what we're going to do is we are going to take these students who were very nice in allowing us to work on their pieces, and we are going to just try to revise them. We got to dim the lights a little bit, right? Or do you care? I think having it just the front ones off was going to be helpful. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to revise this. We're going to find places to show versus tell. We're going to decide where we feel that we should use more words and where we feel we should use fewer words. And I'm just going to kind of do it, lead it my way. Now, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to go turn on track changes. In fact, I'm going to turn them on down here. All right? So right-clicking gives you the track changes, and you can turn track changes on and off so that we can see what we're doing. Yeah? A little bit bigger. Yeah. All right. Zoom. How's that? Much better? All right. By the way, just for fun, other things that I always do to Microsoft Word. All right. If you guys don't do this, then maybe this is so autocorrect options. Microsoft Word likes to autocorrect everything. If you don't click off this button, every time you backspace and things like that, it will think, oh, they want an autocorrect feature for this, and they'll add random autocorrect things. I think it's better than it used to be, but it's really annoying. So remember to turn that off. I always turn off this because I don't want them making my hyphens into dashes because I like to do it my way, but that will all get erased once this computer or whatever. But all right, so I also really like to have the document map out. I wonder how. Normally I put that on the ribbon. All right, well, we won't do that. Well, yeah, we won't bother you guys with that. So here we have Colby's writing. Colby, raise your hand. Yay, Colby, thanks. Now, what we're going to try and do is just take this paragraph. I want you guys to read through the paragraph. I'm going to give you a few minutes, and I want you to be thinking about ways you could change this using what we discussed last week. So the pyramid of abstraction, the writing small concrete details as opposed to large sweeping details, looking for repeated constructions when you say something and then you show it and then you tell it, or you tell it and then you show it. All of these things, let's look at this and see what we would do. All right, so take a few seconds. All right. I read it, so we're going to take that. Well, we're going to go sentence by sentence, so it's okay. So my instincts on this say this is pretty good. We are getting a sense of the scene. I don't see any major flaws in this. That's one of the reasons I picked it, as I wasn't looking for stuff with big flaws, but I was looking for stuff that we could do a pass on. It feels wordy to me. There's too many words in this for what we're doing, and also I feel that there are places where it's just not concrete enough. So let's start talking about this first sentence, and let's tighten this first sentence. The goal is going to be to cut out words. What do you think we could do to trim this down? Yeah.
Well, you can mention its name at the very beginning. The in itself is called the Golden Crown, so you can combine sentence 1 and 2 by saying the Golden Crown, comma, lies the royal palace in the center of the city. Have lots of noble carriages going around it. And
Oh, stupid thing is not letting me. Where we are, draft. Okay, there we are. Microsoft Word, stop being lame. This is Word 2010, which I do, or 2000. The newest one, which I do not like. I like 2010. I do not like the newest one. All right, there we are. Okay, so the Golden Crown, you could even just do this, right? The Golden Crown was located one street over from the Royal Palace. Or you could say wasn't in. I do think getting that in there earlier is a good idea. This isn't trimming, but one thing that you want to do, and along with this idea, is we want to follow the character's attention, okay? And so the character's attention is on the in, so why is the description of the in way down here? Where is our description? Right here. Our description of the in is way down here, which makes me wonder, why is it not up here? That's one of the first things I would do. It'd be like, we're describing the in, let's put it there. Now, there could be reasons why you don't want to do that, because the character's attention isn't really on the in at the moment. The character's attention is on something else, and then you're going to get a description of the in or the narrative flow, but that's one thing. What else can we do to this first sentence, though? Over here. Right. How can we turn the noble carriages into a show? How can we make this a present visualization as opposed to a tele description? Anyone want to try a sentence? Go for it.
one of the noblemen yelled at the stable boy for not brushing his horse correctly.
Okay, there's definitely a show that we could do. Yeah.
We could just move the description of the coat of arms up a bit.
Okay.
Carriages with the coats of arms outside the doors could be seen coming and going.
Okay. Anyone else want to take a stab at it? Yeah, in the back.
The main character had a sidestep from being run over from a carriage coming and going.
Yeah, I think one of the things that he's trying to get across is that there are many different carriages, which is what he says. And so we need a sentence that, if we can, conveys that without saying it like this. Maybe the way he said it is the best way to do it.
I think that there are all these different carriages of all these noble people. They probably want to stand out from each other. So there are probably lots of different colors. We can talk about that.
Yeah, if you wanted a specific description, I think that's the way you may want to go, is say, a carriage passed with this color, and the driver yelled at the carriage in front of them who was waiting to drop off its noble occupant that had this bright color. That's more words. And so maybe this image is not one. Colby's the only one that can really decide in the context of this story if those words were ones that he wanted to expend here or if he wanted to move beyond it. Yeah, go right here.
I think something we could do is take out the passive voice.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I noticed. Right here, right? The could be seen is the passive voice. Now, I like doing this where we just show it. The passive voice is when nobody is doing the thing. It could be seen. And one of the things that I would want from this is to get her a little bit closer. It's Sarah. A little bit closer in. And get across the sense of her familiarity with it. And so I might construct a new first sentence that has them pulling up and, 3 carriages in line, and she looks out and, remembers the food that she had here last time. Like, I hope they still have the roasted beets. Those were so good. Which shows what she likes, that she's been here before. You don't have to say she's been here before if she thinks, I love the roasted beets here, or, oh, where's the master's cat that I always play with, or whatever it is that about her that makes her interesting that we apply to this. And so I would want to start up here with character, if we can. Would just be one of my things. Looking at, since the paragraph transitions into her anyway, I'd probably do that. Now, that's not the only way to do it. Certainly not the only way to do it. And I don't think that this is a bad way to crush it, but I do think we have to get rid of this could be seen and just say, many other noble carriages came and went. So what we just did right there, this is like a basic level change without changing anything too fundamental, is we took out the passive voice and we made it active. The carriages are doing something rather than carriages being seen by no subject doing something. And then we've got this thing right here that we've already talked about, which is kind of a vague image. You know, if instead you park behind someone with a crest, with a griffin rising, or, you know, with a lion roaring, or, you know, a hart that's been stabbed to the wall with an arrow, whatever, you know, your royal crests are like, or your noble house's crest, then that's an image. Particularly if any possibility that a noble house is important later on in the story, mentioning them here and characterizing them as the one that's yelling at the other ones, then you've suddenly got, oh, this noble house, I'm going to run into one of their nobles later on, and I will remember this incident. We've given foreshadowing to who they are. It's a missed opportunity, I feel, if there are any use of these nobility later on. All right? So we've already talked about stayed here on the rare occasions. So we would want to get across that it's a rare treat for her to come along. Is there any way we can construct a sentence that gets this across in a more characterization way? Yeah, Matt. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. Yeah, you totally can show giddiness. Another thing you could do right here is you could have her notice a difference. Depending on who she is and what she might notice, if she notices that her favorite cat seems to have had kittens, then she's like, oh, I wish I would have, been here earlier. They're all grown up now, or something like that, to get across that she didn't get to come last time, but she's been here before. All right? All right. Now, this sentence is really awkward. All right? These two sentences really are really awkward, which is, I shouldn't say really. They aren't that, they're very legible, they're very readable. But these are the sort of sentences that I look to say, how can we make this an image? How can we make this about character instead of just a description of the scene? Because these sentences are doing one thing. They aren't giving us the character's emotion. They aren't giving us plot. They are only giving us a description of the situation, and it's an abstract situation. It's not one, she's thinking about the fact that she doesn't get to come. We've got all this extra information about her father that may be important, but these are sentences that have a big bullseye on them when I'm doing a revision. And I end up with sentences like this all the time in my revisions that I need to find a way to make these more active, okay? Let's see. Now, this right here, I would probably new paragraph that, just because the way it's written right now, just pretend that it's written this way, we are now diverting from a description of the place to her actively doing things. Yeah.
If she has her journal with her,
yeah,
you could very easily have she hadn't been in the city in a while because she flipped the last time she was there.
Right, yes. It depends on how important the journal is to her, but that's exactly right. Like, I like this one because suddenly here, she's doing something. Like, this is a great sentence. She's pulling the journal close to her chest and watching the crowds. Those are two very, number one, it tells us that there are crowds. This is a busy place. And she's got a journal, and she's making, she's giving us visual cues of how she feels with the emotional state she's in. And so these are the sort of sentences that we want to look for more. Now, how could we make this a more how can we, if we want to add words to this? I think it's a great sentence. If we wanted to take a step up or down the pyramid of abstraction, what do we do with this sentence? Yes?
Like, why is she feeling like a
Okay. Yes, replace clouds. That's what I do. I would replace the crowd with individuals, and make her use the journal. This is her journal where she writes about things? Does she like, I'm gonna have to write about this wonderful experience of seeing these things? What can pass on the street that she would never see back home? That is so interesting about the world, that can tell us things about the world and tell us things about her, that she can be like, oh, I've got to write down about this so later on I can describe this scene in my journal, if that's who she is. We have to know who she is. But yes, the way you move that down on the pyramid abstraction is you pick out a few examples of people that can display things about your world. But again, these are not hard, fast rules. If you're doing this, to do this correctly, you're going to add at least another sentence here. And you, as writers, have to decide, do I want this more succinct sentence that's focused on her and her emotions, or do I want to start diverting, since this is a descriptive section, some of that attention to some of the specifics of what is passing me on the street? All right? Yes?
What might be kind of cool is if to combine what she's seeing with these white stone buildings and the fact that there's the spring sun out, and
Uh-huh.
maybe the sun bouncing off these bright, the coat of arms even that
Right.
she sees and the buildings, and then trying to decide if she's gonna use her journal to shade herself because she's hanging on to her journal and she wants to hold it close, but at the same time she wants to see all the people around her that she's gonna put in that journal, and in order to see it because of the reflection or something, she
Right.
chooses to hold it to shade her so she can see.
Definitely a direction you could go. I worry about that getting too wordy as well. You just have to be able to do it tightly, but yeah. Does anyone want to give us an example? Let's do something on the street. Let's write something really concrete. Just give me try and come up with something in 4 or 5 words that's a really concrete thing of something she could see on the street. Not knowing Colby's world at all, it's okay. This is not something we're saying he should do. It's just if we wanted to. All right, right here, example. Oh, cool. Okay, how you gonna describe that?
Well, I'm a little confused as to if there's nobility walking by or if these are just people.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It would either mean flashy stuff or
Okay.
more mundane things, but at least it's stuff that you can find in the city.
Okay. So you could describe a wealthy merchant passing by with a line of guards before and a line of guards behind, and describe what kind of jewelry, what's valuable in this world. This may be a world where something unique is valuable. If it is, you could do something very cool, covered in shells, right? He's got shell bracelets and shells on his hat, and you're like, wow, he's got the really expensive shells, or something like that, right?
I was thinking entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
You are at the Capitol, so
Yeah,
maybe like a minstrel band or
right.
like an old time puppet show.
Exactly. This could be an area to show something specific about the culture as well. Did they have puppet shows? What do they think of them? Yes. That is one of the things I was looking for, is the other senses. To bring this down on the pyramid abstraction, if you describe the sound, like you said with the minstrels, that's a great one. Or the crier yelling out, I have information on this, who wants to pay me for it? Or whatever it is that happens in the city, getting the sounds, the scents, all of these things. Yes?
You can then still include the wooden stone of the city because they're reverberating off of the
Yeah.
wooden stone.
Yeah.
You could have like her journal see the violence of individuals wanting recognition in the crowd.
Okay. Yeah.
Mine couldn't contrive anything.
Okay. Yeah.
Building off of other senses, maybe her inward emotions to help
Yeah.
ground us inside of what she's actually feeling.
Yeah, if you went longer, giving us more of her viewpoint would probably be something important to do here if you're expanding this, because we've started with her, right? The first sentence is about her. So we're going to want to see these people and her reaction to them, because you're kind of giving this promise. This is the character paragraph. Above it was the non-character paragraph as it's stated right now.
One question for you.
Mm-hmm.
When you do your revisions like we talked about last time, is this what you do, or do
Yeah.
you go through and actually fix it as you go?
Oh no, I actually fix it. I don't put the editing marks on. I will go through and just have it, but there'll be editing marks all over it from my assistants and from my editor, and they will each be highlighted. If you hover over them, it says who wrote it. it'll be by each of them as well. And usually what happens nowadays is my editor goes through and does all of this stuff with the editing marks. And then it goes to Peter, my editorial assistant, who goes through and just accepts all of them that he thinks I would just naturally accept, which is most of them, and leaves like the 10% that he thinks I might not want to change, or that he thinks I might want to make a larger change or something like that, and he leaves those. And so I'm really only having to deal with 10% of the edits that come back. But then added to that are Peter's own comments, which are less line edit and more, hey, you really, for continuity reasons, probably want to mention this here, or this is out of continuity with this chapter, and things like that, along with what Isaac has added and people like that. But yeah, I won't do it in editing marks. Now, if you like the editing marks thing, one nice thing about, and I'm not sure if the older words can do this. The new word does do this version where is it? This one. That anything you it doesn't highlight things in the same way. So it's easier to look at it as a real thing. It'll keep any additions. But if you, anyway. It can work better for that and leave your track changes. I'm just so used to working in this thing that I like it better like this. So, all right. Shall we do a little bit more? What time do we got here? Let's go on to the next one. All right. Colby, well done. Thank you. All right. We're going to do Michelle. Michelle, raise your hand. Oh, hi, Michelle. There you are. Yay, Michelle. A little bit bigger. Got it. All right. So how's that for size? Okay. All right. So, this paragraph I felt was actually quite strong. And this is the sort of paragraph that I run across in my writing where I'm like, nothing's really wrong with this one. What I'm liking about this paragraph is this is a very character-focused paragraph. And you can see her emotion through the whole thing and everything she's doing, which I really liked. She's melding plot and character together. But I often get to things like this, and I'm like, what can I add to make the scene a little more concrete and visual? This is a very different paragraph from the last one, which I felt had too many words. This one potentially might not have enough. And so my question to you is, this is a different style of paragraph. What can we do to this? And at the end, we may do all this, and you may say to yourself, no, I liked it better the first way. And that's fine. My goal with doing these sorts of things is to teach you the options you have for making your writing more descriptive. So looking at this paragraph, where are places that you spot that we could be more concrete? Yes?
In the second line down,
Mm-hmm.
sentence, maybe she could stick Kinsey with it after she cut off her hair and he had a fit, is confusing to me. I don't know whether Kinsey is the she or he.
Yeah, I think that was one of the awkward sentences in this. I think that she hasn't decided to steal a knife yet, but she's already thinking about sticking him with it. And I think this sentence really does need a little bit of work. Can you rewrite this sentence in some way, just for clarity?
I don't know if I assume Kinsey is a he.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe she could stick Kinsey with it.
Or maybe she could stick Kinsey with it, period.
Yeah. Right, go back here. Okay, there you go. So it's just a matter of reordering there. What's another way? Any other suggestions?
I would do maybe she could stick Kinsey
Yeah, that's getting pretty awkward, though. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Okay. So let's take that as one way we could take this. If we wanted to add more to it, we could do something where she's like she wasn't supposed to have one, but could imagine the of slicing. Wow. Slice. Unfamiliar keyboard. Yeah. Off her hair. One annoying chunk at a time. Something like that, right? Yeah, chunk at a time, right? So one annoying chunk at a time. But if you do something like this, it's letting us follow her attention a little bit better. Now, the thing is, what was strong about the first piece is that it does feel very stream of consciousness, which could match this character and this writing style better than kind of doing it the Brandon way, which is giving a stronger direction of what she's going. In this case, she can imagine, she wasn't supposed to have one, but can imagine the satisfaction of, Kinsey would have a fit. Then she imagines sticking him with it, right? It's a parallel structure, right? If you build it like that. That's one way you could go with this, but it is not in the same style. And I don't think this is what Michelle would want to do. It's just showing one direction you could take this. We'll go here and then back there.
You could say after, let's see, maybe we should stick Kinsey with it after she cut her hair. Got a bit. I could just see him laying there, and then give you a description. I could just see him laying there with, wondering where, and then you could say I could just see, and then you could describe a little bit about him.
Right. Yeah, I would assume in this scene, this chapter, we already know Kinsey by this point in the book. He's already forbidden her to do some of these things and whatnot, but yeah. The other thing is I get from this a little more whimsy than that. I don't think she actually wants to kill Kinsey, at least from the tone of this paragraph. She just likes the idea of stabbing him because it's amusing to her. Back here.
Well, I just think another way of reordering
Uh-huh.
would just be, whatever. Maybe she could cut off her hair with the knife and then stick Kinsey with it after we had it.
Yeah. You could even cut the fit, right? You could just cut that fit, the idea of the fit, or, yeah.
Another issue I noticed if we're done with this.
Okay, let's just go ahead and close up the sentence. The problem we're having, just so you all know, is that we aren't following the character's line of reasoning. Because she hasn't decided to take the knife, but she wasn't supposed to have one anyway. So there's a little hiccup there. Okay, let's go on to something else. Yeah.
Right. The first time I read, she conjured a little boy. I wasn't clear on what was happening.
Okay.
What I would suggest is, if this is the first time she's doing something like that, have her do something. She did a little gesture and conjured a little boy who she named Robbie.
Okay. I'm going to assume that we already know that she conjures, but we're going to pretend for the sake of this how we would do it in a more descriptive way. All right? So, Michelle, again, this is us just going off somewhere. I don't think this is a flaw in the writing. I'm sure you've done it before. But one thing that did highlight for me is that when I like to do a magic, one of the things I look for is what is the character doing when they perform the action of magic. For instance, when you say, a master carpenter carves something, you can describe what they're doing as they're carving, and you can make concrete images from that to pull the reader into the writing as they are doing this thing that's very solitary. Any sort of art that we do in our world, you have those things for. Yet in magic, we frequently like to just come up with the shortcuts of this thing just happening, which there's no rule that says you can't, right? It's your magic. You can do whatever you want. But I try to construct my magics in such a way that it has at least visual, if not auditory or other sensory components to it, so that it gives me the chance as the writer to use these tools. And simply conjuring means that we don't have anything there. And so I, as a writer, would start brainstorming, what can I do to give myself more tools as a writer to make these more visually interesting? And I do a lot of illusions in my books. And there are a lot of them I've done. In one book, someone is throwing up handfuls of dust and conjuring into it very subtly as you go, and you are seeing images come out of the dust, and it's almost like, boom, there's an image here. And another one, the character is using smoke in the same way and conjuring things out of the smoke to give us visualizations of something forming and something being done as we are approaching using magic, right? So the question to you then is, what would you want to do here? Maybe for your own style, you don't want to do that, but it is a cool tool to have, all right? So I want to highlight that. Does anyone have any suggestions? This is not for Michelle. This is just for this piece taken on its own. What would you do? What are things you could do to make this more active a thing, a conjuration? Yes?
Just using the other senses,
Yeah.
their physical reaction to the magic. that she's
Okay.
doing herself.
Okay, yeah.
She could pull out a slip of paper and burn it.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Matt. Okay, you could totally do that. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. Words of Radiance, Shalon's an illusionist. What she does, she has to draw something first before she can create an illusion of it. So I actually have the act of drawing, which crafts the illusion. Yeah.
I was actually going to say she could I'm just imagining a scene where someone draws something basic and plucks it out of the painting.
Right, you could rip it out of the painting. That'd be a great image, something like that. I was writing a book where I actually cut this magic because it felt too similar to things I'd done before, but it was, I was having somebody Photoshop reality, right? Where they did something and then they're smudging it with the thumb as the smudge tool, and they're, and you just, something like that where there's something to actually physically be doing. What these things allows, these are all one style. There's another style you could do where, it's where, I don't know, let's try something that doesn't involve crafting the illusion like you're drawing it.
Some of my favorite magic systems, to perform the magic, they don't necessarily have to do anything physical.
Yeah.
But they have to use their mind or their awareness or their consciousness to access
Right.
the source of the magic and
Yeah.
mentally comport it.
Definitely another way you could go. Robert Jordan has the whole idea of when Rand's learning to use the magic, he has to summon the void, right? Where it's a meditation practice. He imagines a candle flame and burns everything around it until his mind is empty, which is it is abstract, but it's at least something active he can be doing, so that when you come to a time where you have the magic, maybe she wants a magic that, she doesn't want to have to take 20 minutes to come up with an image of a little boy. That doesn't work for this scene. But have something that the character does in order to give us something to latch onto. Okay? Yeah. Look.
She could just, along with what they were saying, picture somebody that she'd seen before, have her close her eyes, picture this, and once the image is firm in her head, she breathes out and opens her eyes, and there it is.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
I think one of the interesting things you have there is that it has a name.
Mm-hmm.
The illusion itself has a name as a Robbie.
Yeah. Robbie's probably a character that we've seen before in the book.
So if Robbie is a name, she needs to put a name to her illusions. Maybe naming her illusions is how she adds it.
That's cool. Yeah. Okay. Let's go ahead just to another paragraph of hers. Let's read these next two paragraphs. Let's do the next three and look for things that we would maybe want to revise line edit wise. Okay. Some good stuff in here too. Let me talk about some of the good things that are going on here. This whole palms thing is awesome, right? This is not from our world, but it's a very natural sort of thing. It actually reminds me of Korea a little bit, where if you're going to hand something to someone, you do it with both hands, or if you're going to shake hands, you put your other hand here to show that you're not holding a dagger with the other one, which is kind of a cool thing. And here, it's to show the marks on your hands, so that you can give them, some comfort, even though he doesn't actually have any. But it's a nice cultural thing. This is really good because it evokes It's something you can do that evokes culture and constantly reminds us that we're not in our world. Really great world-building aspect right here. All right, now let's talk about things that, that we noticed that line edit-wise we might want to fix. Go for it.
I noticed this the other one too. She here at the very beginning says, please if the success can energize from her audacity and just eager to start hacking away at her stupid long locks. It's very listed.
Yeah.
Not very showing. Like she could be grinning, she could be like jumping up and down a little bit.
She could be. She definitely could be. Now, I'm going to say on this one, this is a could, not a should. A lot of times you just you can't do this with every sentence, right? Well, maybe you could, but it would actually get really distracting. It's not really just show, don't tell. It is show some of the times instead of telling. But that's, what's that? Show the right amount, yeah, for what you're wanting to do. So I don't really think this is a big deal except for the fact that there's an extra comma. Because we have a single subject, right? I'm not going to give you a grammar lesson, but if you don't know why there shouldn't be a comma there, don't worry. If we all do it. Then what's that? This isn't the Oxford comma. No, it's not. It's not. Because please success, she's feeling two things. Oh, you're doing Oxford. I see. No, I do like the Oxford comma. Yeah, it's the lack of parallelism that's throwing me off. I think you're okay with that comma as you describe it. But I'm seeing this as a parenthetical, right? With this to these two things. It's a really awkward sentence if it's not a parenthetical, which is why I'm looking to get rid of it. Okay, you know your stuff. Okay, what else do we want to do on this?
The editor in me is saying to take a look at the diction. We have the word spasmed, we have inflected, we have lob down in the last paragraph. Each of those, I feel, are little odd words for this context. And I understand the author has some license to do that.
Right.
But they're creating some weird images for me.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one. This is author prerogative, and if you were a copy editor, I would not want you doing that to my writing. If I've used lobbed, I want the lob. Now you, in your own writing, and we're pretending this is our own writing, if you're coming across this and you're like, wow, you're right, inflected, lobbed, and things like that are all pretty weird words. Do I want to be using this? You could totally ask yourself that. But I want to remember, our job is not necessarily, we're in two minds. You're feeling embarrassed. Don't feel embarrassed. We're of two minds on this because it's someone else's piece. But if I were editing someone else's piece, I would never note those three things. In my own piece, I would say, do I want to do this? Does that make sense? These are word choice sorts of things. We're looking to make this more specific, though. So I'm glad you brought that up, but I do want to warn the editors, if you're editing somebody, be very careful about when you try to change their diction and things like this. Look for words when you think they've used the wrong word and they were shooting for the right word and they just didn't know what it was. Or if you're like, this is a better word here that you were shooting for. Okay, someone who hasn't raised their hand or haven't called them before, go for it.
I feel like the guy should touch her arm before he does the notice.
Yes, I would say that this is definitely, unless this is omniscient and I haven't noticed it, this is technically a viewpoint error. Now, this could be a stylistic choice, but it is something to be aware of. That's a viewpoint. Why is this a viewpoint error? She can't notice she can't notice herself not noticing him until he touches her, right? There are styles of writing where people just do this consistently, and as long as you're consistent, but be aware that's a viewpoint error. Okay, what else do we got? In the back. Yes. Okay, lacked any inflection. You're right, it is inflection. That is just a typo. T-I-O-N. Oh, I got the wrong one. It's the problem of going from the screen. Inflection. Okay, so one thing I noticed up here is that I really like the whole palms thing, but I don't get a visual at all on this guy. Right? Now, we don't want to break action too much, but there's a guy that's here, and we've got a whole thing on his tone and everything that she's reading into it without ever telling us what he looks like. And so maybe this is a world where tone is way more important than the way someone looks. But as a reader, I'm like, big burly guy, little skinny guy. Is he 90? Is he handsome and 22? Those are very different guys to sneak up on me. Right? So who is this guy? And that's not to say that I want 4 or 5 paragraphs of description here, or even 1. But as a writer, when I run across this, I'm like, I probably want a line of description about this guy other than his palms, which is really good.
Well, even just describing the hands a little bit could help if they're old.
Oh, that's right. There you go.
Strong,
Yeah.
hands,
Yeah.
no indication.
Yeah, right here.
So you could kind of go along with that. Since she does go into a description about the hands. Even just describing the hands.
Are the fingernails well trimmed? Yeah.
But just adding that extra bit of description would give more clarity to who this guy is. Unrecognizable family mark.
Yeah.
No work mark. Kind of going on the same lines with it's like his tone, his older voice maybe lacks any inflection or stuff like that. Just saying, like, or his soft tone. What might this?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes, in the back. Yes, you. There are 2 hands in the row, so that's why I did the back. She's closer, so you're in the back.
Okay. When she says his general air seems to be that of amusement, maybe take
Yeah.
out the seems and say, I don't know the right way to say that, but get up amused. I don't know.
Yeah, I think your instinct there could be right in this sort of thing. The thing is, you need the seem to avoid viewpoint errors if you describe it this way. But what is a general air of amusement look like? Can we come up with how a general air of amusement is? And sometimes you just want to say he has a general air of amusement. But if you didn't, what can we do? What's a way to show that someone is bemused?
Describe like maybe he has like a wry smile.
Uh-huh.
And you have like a description of the person and like his general air.
Right. If he's saying, whoa, whoa, take it easy, and smiling, Riley, that's different from, whoa, whoa, take it easy. He stepped back and glared at me, right? Those are things they're doing, yeah.
Or like a twinkle in his eye.
Yeah, twinkle in his eye. Twinkles are so hard to judge what a twinkle even means, but yeah. Uh-huh.
Have him chuckle a little, like, oh,
Yeah.
there's this little girl, she's threatening me with a knife, whatever.
Uh-huh.
If he throws the knife in his throat, he dies the rest of the
Yeah. All right. Let's clap. Good job. Yay. Thank you for putting up with us. Yeah. Carving apart your writing. All right. Let's go to Rick. Rick, where are you? Rick, yay, Rick. All right. All right. Let's read this whole thing that's on the screen right here. And I'm going to add tabs because it didn't get across for you. But yes. 10 minutes. Great. Okay, so what I liked about this piece is, again, we've got some nice character stuff going on in this piece. We get, by the end of this, we know this character in just 4 paragraphs. We already got a sense for who she is, right? This is really solid characterization for her. And even him, with a few words here and there, we know kind of, what we've got going on here, the character dynamic between them. So what can we do? Let's look at this at the top here. What things stand out to you? If you are, again, we are not trying to change their piece. We are trying to make it more active and concrete and more readable.
I don't know, like this might just be me, but would putting his position, like something about his position, because for a minute I wasn't sure if he was behind, like if he
That might just be because I chopped off the paragraphs before this. Yeah.
then never mind.
Yeah, you're right. This didn't start a scene just like this. So, yeah.
Again, I'd add sensory details. Like,
Okay.
what does Owen's hand piece
Yeah, yeah. What does he smell like? He's really close to her, and anytime you're writing a story where there are two people of opposite genders, that one is obviously flirting with the other, there's going to be some sort of attraction stuff going on, even if it's subtle, like scent and, oh wow, he's really close to me, and things like this. With this, I'm like, is there no attraction at all? Maybe there's not. Maybe these two characters, but this seems to imply flirtation to me. So I'm like, why is there no sensory detail on him and whether or not he's handsome and whether or not these arms are strong or whatnot?
In the first paragraph, the second sentence, like, it tells you that she's thinking and then like describes the thoughts.
Yeah.
Get rid of everything before the colon and just italicize all the thoughts.
You possibly could. That's a stylistic choice, but it is the style I prefer. And I do think you could go like this. And this is a really hard one. Oh, let's not put that over there because then we can't read it. This is a really hard one because this stuff is awesome. Like, this is hilarious. But this whole jumble of thoughts is also distracting us from the fact that there's a guy there with his hand over her mouth. And it's like, can you get all these thoughts in those few moments? So the jumble is really helping to say, you're going to get a jumble of thoughts right here. And, you know, it's like a topic sentence for this jumble. So it's really a hard one to decide if I would cut or not. Yeah, and I might just look at this and say, can I trim these things down a little bit and make it shorter? I'm not sure. This is all really fun stuff. But I might, for instance, this one. Will all of our conversation involve him ambushing me somehow? I would probably move that one down. Because you can end with the hey, you cut his hair short. That's kind of, that, I don't know, you know, that you've got this little attractive thing. This is a fun line on its own. It doesn't need to go in the jumble. And so simply moving it down to somewhere else can give you, sometimes in these big scenes where we're like, you know, wondering about character thoughts as we're losing them through dialogue, you've got that nice little line you can move in there. So that's probably what I would do. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, wow. Hey, no, that's a real legit thing that I've never mentioned. When I took this class from Dave, he said, you have to watch out for the phrases like, he flew across the room. Because in a fantasy novel, he flew across the room could mean two different things, right? He crossed the room in a hurry, or he flew into the air across the room. And so lines like that, you have to be a little extra careful about. Nice. Yes? Uh-huh. It could. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you just want to decide for yourself. Like when I picked this one, the reason I picked it is I thought this paragraph probably could set the scene for the rest of this a little bit better, with a little bit more sensory detail. But I wanted to bring it up as a conversation point. I don't know that I would change very much of this at all because it reads and flows really well. And I might just like even cut this one and try to trim it down even more. I kind of like this one, but I kind of don't. Because the more you can trim through a sequence like this, you don't want to leave it completely stark. And letting the two characters play off each other, the stronger the scene is generally going to be. So yeah.
What's your opinion, back to that part where they talked about the jumbling comments?
Mm-hmm.
What's your opinion for like the reader when you could start to like intermix stuff like this to speed up the pace? So like you got a couple of those comments intermixed.
Right.
The haircut short. His hand tasted salty, and then another comment, and then another. Like, does that speed up pace?
Yes, it actually slows the pace down. Interjections slow the pace. So this is actually all of it up front, and then a bunch of stuff like this is actually going to be paced faster a lot of times than taking one sentence and putting it in between each sentence of dialogue. It's going to read really choppily in that case. But you do need some little things, like her grin and reply. One of the things about this working in here is everything that's in this section with the dialogue is related directly to the dialogue rather than distracting us from it. It's enhancing the dialogue. Even despite what people say about no adverbs, I like using them more often. I mean, I think this calmly means something to us because if you went and did a large show, which you could do, that he's calm in here, it would take our sense away from the conversation. Now, some people would say, always get rid of that and put in the show, that he's calm. That can be your own stylistic choice. I would leave the calmly because it's serving a purpose, and it's letting you, in this dialogue, not have a big, long, descriptive sentence to show how calm he is. Instead, it's letting us focus on the interaction between them. We're out of time, so thank you, guys. I'm gone for 3 weeks. Be nice to your substitutes. When I get back, we'll talk about the business, okay? Bring up your little dealies and have a good day. Oh, and we'll clap. Thank you.